Everyone, it's Justine. Welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that unites and frustrates us all, and that is paper scraps. What do you do with them and how can you get rid of them? Well, you can create some really stunning cards and techniques using paper scraps, and I'm going to show you how. Now specifically today I'm going to be using paper strips, but of course if you own scraps you can cut them down to strips, so you have them. We all know that you do. Whether they are in boxes and boxes of paper scrap hoards, or whether you have a junk drawer full of them, or whether you keep them neatly organized in your cardstock pockets in front of you. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Yeah, we all know that eventually they end up in a bit of a junk drawer. Now, I do try and keep mine a bit organized, but I do have a drawer where I just pull some randomly now and again. And whatever your way is, that's fine. So let's get you inspired to use them up and start clearing them out, because let's face it, they just make our craft area seem a little bit cluttered. All right, so I'm going to start off with a piece of double-sided adhesive that is 8.5 by 11. I'm going to peel the back off. Now you have two choices here. You can lay down your paper strips directly on top like I'm going to do, or if you want some more sturdier die cuts, lay down a piece of cardstock. It doesn't have to be any specific color or quality, and then put your strips on there either with glue or use a second sheet of this adhesive. It's up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by adding 1/2-inch strips of cardstock, and I decided to do some rainbow here. And I'm going to let these hang off the edge because later I can trim them up and I can use the leftover pieces for other projects, which is what I'm going to do in this video. And so for me personally, when I decided to start using up a bunch of my scraps, I thought rainbow color worked, but of course you can use any color combination you like. And you'll also notice that I'm working on a very large sheet of paper. Why? Because I could easily cut this down, for example, into 4 different panels, or I can do a whole bunch of die cutting all at once if you have a die cutting machine that will support 8.5 by 11 paper. If you don't, you could always cut down this piece of cardstock, of course, and have it so it fits your regular die cutting machine. Now, as I'm going through this, I'm also going in and filling these small spaces. Again, this is completely optional whether or not you want to do it or whether you want to rip off a piece of the strips, for example, that are already hanging off of the edge. So now that I have my entire sheet here sort of filled with all of my strips, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper trimmer, and I'm just going to trim off all the strips on the edge. And I can keep those for later if I want to continue using those scraps. And this is going to use up a lot of cardstock if you were to do this in bulk, for example. And of course, you could vary up the strip sizes as well. Because let's face it, we probably have a lot of these paper strips that we can cut down. Today's video is a collaboration with Ingrid Blackburn. Ingrid is a dear friend of mine, and she's one of those awesome people that actually makes a trip to Germany now and again. Now she is going to be creating with paper strips as well, so you're going to be wanting to check her video out also for more inspirational ideas. I will have her video link and channel link in the video description below. Okay, so what I've done now is I've grabbed that sheet of paper that I just created, and I'm adding a whole bunch of die cuts, and I'll go into which die cuts these are in a moment. Now, as I said, I have an 8.5 by 11-inch size die cutting machine. I own the Spellbinders Platinum machine, so I'm running all of these through at once. Now, the thing about running through a machine this size with this many dies is it can be a little bit hard to crank. So don't be afraid to use your regular standard die cutting machine. Just cut down the cardstock that you just created and cut as many dies as you can. So I tried to cut a variety of sentiments as well as frames. And the great part about this is I have the double-sided adhesive on the back of my die cut, so I don't have to worry about gluing them either. Now I want you to pay close attention here when I take this off, and you see how kind of flimsy this die cut is that I just created. And the reason being is because I didn't add cardstock beforehand. So that's what I was saying before. If you want sturdy dies, add the cardstock to the double-sided adhesive and then add another layer of this adhesive on top. All right, so a fun question for today is, if you were to compare the size of your paper scrap collection to an object, what object would that be? Is your paper scrap stash comparable to the Titanic, or are you more of someone who tosses them quite often and you keep it down to a minimal space, or do you not keep them at all? I want to know in the comments below, so let me know. So as I was saying earlier, when you add the cardstock, you're going to get some sturdier die cuts. So once again, grabbing that 8.5 by 11 sheet of adhesive, and I'm going to go ahead and add a piece of cardstock. Now I'm using Neenah Exact Index cardstock. It's not the same as the Solar White. This one here you can get a ream for like 10 bucks, and I use these for my mono printing. And so it's not very expensive to just grab a piece of cardstock here and throw it on. So you're not really wasting any good quality cardstock. And now you can go ahead, flip it around, take the adhesive off, and you can go ahead and add your strips right on the cardstock. This does mean, however, when I die cut later though, that I don't have the adhesive backing to make it a sticker, but I could go ahead and add another piece of adhesive if I wanted to, but I don't want to waste my good adhesive. So this time I'm actually going in another rainbow order, and I'm doing horizontal lines rather than diagonal. I do want to mention though that if you're doing horizontal lines, make sure that you're really good at cutting your strips straight, because if you don't cut them perfectly straight, then they're going to look a little bit off, and I did struggle with a couple strips being off. So as I said, you can save yourself a lot of headaches by just making diagonal strips if you want. And don't forget that you can actually go in and add variety of strips. So the first half of this cardstock I simply did with 1/4 inch strips, and then I decided to switch it up at the top here and just decide to add a few more. Since I die cut from various areas each time, you can of course do that. So if you want that really uniform look, you can do that. If you want a little bit more interest, go ahead and add multiple sizes of strips. And as I said, you can go ahead and you can cut down just this into 4 pieces, 4 card panels if you like. And you can use these as card fronts. So it's up to you how you really want to go about doing this. Me personally, I still like to have a lot of white space on my cards when I'm using this many colors, but again, it's a personal preference. If you are someone that likes a little bit subtler of cards, don't forget that you could add a piece of vellum on top of your stripes here, and you can go ahead and really mute those colors, and that'll create a little bit more of a subtle rainbow look. Another possibility, rather than going in with some straight die cuts, is add yourself this rainbow striped pattern. You can use this, of course, to go behind die cuts or behind any type of frame. This can make some really beautiful cards. So I've gone ahead and I've die cut this die that I've used in several videos before, and it's the Stamp Market's Birthday Cover Plate die. And I love this die because it's just so pretty, and I've created a ton of techniques. So I'm going to link to some of those videos below in the description if you want to see some more videos with this die. Another thing that you can do is you can use this for shadow dies. And by shadow dies, I mean the die cuts where it cuts a shadow behind the text. So you can see here I've cut this love sentiment out in that striped look, but there's also a second part for this die which I really like, and there's a thin text that can go over top, so you get the letters LOVE as well, and you can add those on the front. And of course you can kind of mix and match dies as well if you'd like. Now when I'm working with really vibrant, beautiful colors, I tend to prefer to accent with either white or black. I find both colors really make both shades really make the colors pop. So by adding simple word dies or perhaps a simple image die like this beautiful flower, you're going to be able to make those colors pop even more. Now, if you can't seem to accent with, let's say, some die cuts, you always have options of adding things like black or white sequins, Nuvo drops, or whatever your preferred embellishment might be. I personally love Nuvo drops. Don't forget, one of my handy tips is just shove them under your armpit, as weird as it sounds, to warm them up, and you'll avoid getting peaks in your Nuvo drops. Oh, the elegance of crafting sometimes. All right, so I'm going to do a quick recap of all the cards that I created using this strips of paper technique. That's super easy to do. Now, because it was just gluing, I decided to just show the final cards. So here's a thanks card using that big sentiment. Then moving on, we have our second card, which has the shadow die look along with an intricate die cut with the stripes, which is just as stunning as having large focal points and thick lines. This beautiful focal point die, just a note, one of my favorites I use all the time.
And then moving into some other cards, using nesting dies, for example, for a large focal point, lots of color, and topped off with a white die cut. I moved into another card with nesting dies as well, this time a star, and added a nice thick thank you white sentiment to it. And then going on to some more looks here, we have the entire background filled with these strips of cardstock with a beautiful die cut, intricate white die cut. Adding those rainbows behind a frame or a cover plate die also looks super stunning. And then we also have this flower with the subtle white accent. I love keeping cards like this in my stash with no sentiment so that I can quickly add one when I need a card in a hurry. They are always great to have on hand.
All right, everyone, I hope you were inspired and found this video really inclusive towards you. I think everyone owns paper scraps, and I hope you got several ideas on how to use them. Don't forget, you can always tag me on Instagram. I love seeing what you're creating, and I also love leaving some likes and comments. Thanks so much for watching.